people together between conferences. So I always want to thank folks like Chris, who's running this group. You know, everything that's done for the SRN is done on volunteer. And so it's really lovely when people have the time to do this. And of course, thank you all for making time this morning to be here. Hopefully we'll have a good time. I think monologues are very cool, and that's what I plan to talk about this morning. I'm going to do a little bit, maybe 10 minutes of chat, maybe 15. I'm Sicilian, so I talk a lot. And then we're going to do some practice ones, and we're going to hear from each other's. And I think it's really fun. It's an exercise I use with students to get them to think both first in their own perspective, and then let's have someone in mind, a character that you're writing, because then you're going to write something in their perspective. And I think it's really interesting. What we find is we often, of course, take things from ourselves and blend them into our characters' perspectives. And that's something people don't always realize. Okay, so let me do the share thing. Okay, if I hit, yeah, but no, is it on? I don't see it on the screen. I don't see it down on my screen. Let's see what happens if I do this. Let's stop sharing. Okay, here we go. Go to the windows, go to that one. This says give control. Use the icon too. Sorry, guys. It's not really. I am. It went away. All right. That's the recording thing in process. All right. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I did. I did. Window? Or do I want to share the screen? I want to share the screen. Maybe? I tried that.
So what right. We could see before was, yeah, so we can see like your PowerPoint presentation within
you can. Okay, good.
Google Docs.
You can. Yeah, and I'm trying to see that I can see it in mine. All right, so it shows up here. Oh, now I'm moving on there. Oh, that's fine. I'm editing my view. Now my little face is covering half of it. I can't get it full screen for me. Oh, there, now it's full screen for me. And you guys can still see it?
Yeah, we can see you in the corner, okay. And behind you the presentation.
There you go. Then we just have to turn on slideshow. Should work. Oh, all right. Are we good?
I got it.
All right, you guys. Wonderful, wonderful. I can't see you, but that's okay, because I'll see you in a little bit. Yay. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say that I put this together thanks to Leslie Craner, who's also a member of the SRN, and it was for the Association of Writing Programs, which was a group that I'd never heard of. But they meet all over the United States, and this last year they happened to meet in Los Angeles. So she asked me if I would join her and do a presentation. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. It's a group I hadn't heard of and didn't have to travel far. As we all know, it's a deal traveling for the SRN, but we enjoy it very much. So it was here in Los Angeles. And we decided to focus on writing monologues. And I thought it was a really interesting thing to think about. So I'm going to kind of talk through a couple of monologues from the past that I think are brilliant. And then, as I said, we're going to do some based on the very last one that I talk about. So you can see on my list here what I'm going to focus on. And interestingly enough, the first three are all female written. That's kind of a signature of the stuff that I do. And then the last one is written by Thornton Wilder. And we're talking about going back over 100 years. But I do think Our Town is one of the most beautiful plays ever written in the United States. And so we'll see basically Emily's monologue, which is something I use with students because it's a great in to it. And I like to use classic things because part of while we're teaching them how to write, I also want to teach them the history of what they're doing. You know, there is so much history, and that is kind of also what I'm known for. But we forget, you know, things that happened before 1980. Kids call, you know, Back to the Future a classic film. And I think, no, it's not a classic, but of course it is. So even beyond that is something that they're just not familiar with. So I very much appreciate these shows. I start with Susan Harris right now because She was brilliant and still is brilliant. And I'm actually doing a book for Anna Weinstein, who was the secretary of the SRN for a while. And that book is on the works of Susan Harris. And it's been really lovely to go back through her oeuvre and study what she did, because she was the queen of monologues that were telling little one-act plays inside them. And the one that I've chosen for people to focus on here, you'll notice stars this gentleman, Harold Gould. I also love illustrating to younger students who these massive performers were in the past, who they're not going to have had the chance to see. And I kind of have a story about Harold. Of course, as a kid, he wrote his dad. He was in The Sting, and to have been in The Sting was an amazing thing. So here he is over here in The Sting with Robert Redford. And then when I was on Touched by an Angel, he was invited by the casting agent to be a guest star one day. And the writer who was doing that episode, I have to say, heard his name and thought, oh, he's just like, no, he's going to do shtick. That's not what I want. And I said, do you understand his background? He was in the Yiddish theater. He's done so much with his career. He's quite a brilliant actor. And the writer was a little bit like, oh, I don't know if I believe that, but he was, if you will, stuck with him. And then we saw the dailies. And Harold Gould was so wonderful and dramatic and just beautiful. So the monologue that I like comes from this episode of Soap. And I have this picture of Billy Crystal in the bottom, because in one of the oral histories they did with him, which is 35 years after he filmed this scene, he talked about how important it was and how amazing it was to be able to in the room and listen to Harold Gould give this monologue. And it's very long, which is funny because we often tell students you can't have more than 3 lines of dialogue at a time. And in fact, of course, no monologues are any length from 10 to longer. And Susan Harris tended to go longer. So look at this. And this is only page 1. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. This will be available to you later. And I can point to where I find all this on the internet, as well as I'm going to give you the links to watching these later on, because you must watch this. But the bulk of this piece is so beautiful because in the scene, Harold Gould doesn't know that Jody has taken pills to kill himself because his boyfriend wants to marry a woman, right? And so Harold Gould is talking about why he's in the hospital and how important hope is. And it's so important for a monologue to have a theme. And in this case, he's going to go through his married life, his first wife, and how beautiful that was. And then she died. And he didn't think he could go on. And then he met another woman. And he went on. And it was a beautiful thing. And then she died. And now he's here in the hospital, and you can see up here he had a heart attack. So he thought to himself, I'm done. It'll never happen again. But you know what? I don't really believe that. If I believed that, I wouldn't be here in this hotel, letting him so Dacron into my heart. And I think there are so many beautiful lines in this monologue. She literally has him tell his life story. It's a little bit like the mini opening that we all know about to Up, where we see the whole back history of those characters. All in this one lovely monologue. And this is the link down here. Again, this will be part of the PowerPoint you can have later, and you'll see it on the video. But this is brilliant. So that one really strikes me. Another person I think is brilliant, of course, is Linda Bloodworth Thomason, who gave us Designing Women. And this was an amazing show with 3 very powerful women. And of course, my gosh, Jean Smart is where we first met her. And of course, most people now know her from Hacks. And the monologue that I love in here is a wonderful homage to popular culture of the moment and how popular culture sticks in our head. And so there are a lot of phrases and things. If we use them, we're conjuring up a whole nother idea underneath the monologue. And in this case, it's the Dixie Carter character, who is the smart one in the family, if you will, and her sister is the beautiful one. And that's always been their thing. And of course, it's the classic siblings. I can pick on my sister all I want, but if somebody else does it, I will be there to support her, right? The whole sibling thing. And I don't have siblings, so I don't know. So I learned this from TV, and we learn a lot from TV. In this case, what's happened is there's been a beauty pageant, and that is what Suzanne was always, a beauty pageant queen, and she's a judge in this pageant. And Dixie Carter walks into the room listening to this young blonde woman who was a contestant make fun of her sister because she's gained some weight over the years, right? And this was a personal problem that Linda Bloodworth Thomason had. So here she's writing essentially a whole episode about how we treat women, right, when they were beautiful and they're not going to be 22 and beautiful all their life. And that's a huge theme that's very important for the period. And in this lovely piece, I have to tell you, it kills me because it's so beautiful. So she corners this woman in the room in the power that Dixie Carter had and starts to say, perhaps you don't know about my sister Suzanne and her history. She swept every category except congeniality. So there's that little bit of humor in the middle of it, right? She goes on about how brilliant she was, and then she threw batons, and by the time she was done with her batons and the batons lit up, and basically she ends with, that was the night the lights went out in Georgia, which is an amazing song most people know by Reba McEntire, but had previously been done by Vicki Lawrence when she was a regular on the Carol Burnett show. So Thomason is pulling in the way, you know, we think of when we think about popular culture, and I just think it's beautifully written. Now I move on quickly to a show that is one of my favorites right now. And I've always been really excited when they added Jodie Whittaker to be the female doctor in Doctor Who. And this episode is written by a woman, Maxine Alderton. And this was a season where the executive producer, Chris Chibnall, made sure to hire people from the backgrounds of the characters they were writing about. And that's not something everybody has thought about in the past. So I give Chris Chibnall a lot of credit for that. In this particular piece, it's based on Mary Shelley and Percy, and it's the night that obviously that Frankenstein was invented. So the fascinating haunting of Villa Diodati. I can hear some sound in the background. And I'm really pleased because I wrote a chapter in this book on the era of Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who, and that was very, very important to me. But this particular piece is that she is faced with a dilemma, and a monologue is always very good when someone is thinking out loud, because that's when you're hearing them go through the craziness of, oh my God, I only have one choice, or do I, and what do I do? And those are very, very interesting, the interior monologue of your character. So in this case, she's been asked whether or not she should kill Percy Shelley to keep an evil alien from getting loose through him, right? Because it's overtaken his body. And somebody says, yeah, we should get rid of him. And I love this because it's also about the importance of words, right? But she says his thoughts, his words inspire and influence thousands for centuries. If he dies now, who knows what damage we'll have on the future history? She goes, all of this, one matter, one death, one ripple, and history will change in a blink. The future will not be the world you know. And all of this, I think, is really pretty. And then she sums up the issue. She's tried to be part of a team. She's tried to make everybody come to her level. And she's treated everybody so wonderfully equally in these first few episodes of this series. But then she realizes sometimes even I can't win, right? This team structure isn't flat, it's mountainous with me at the summit. And you feel the pain of the work that she's doing and how hard it is to be this character and make these choices. But that's the essence of what a Time Lord has been for the whole 60 years of this series. All summed up into this very nice, neat. And notice how we've gone from the very long Harold Gould all the way down to a little shorter to finally even shorter, which, as I said, was Thornton Wilder's R10. And I love this play. I'm pretty sure most people have seen it one place or another. High schools do it perennially. But Thornton Wilder, when I used to teach this when I was a high school 9th grade American Lit teacher, and it was at an all-girl Catholic school. And I can say it now because it's been, who knows how many years since I did this. But I always made sure they understood that Thornton Wilder, the most beautiful love story written in American plays, in my opinion. It's written by an out gay man, right? Out in New York in 1914, which was an amazing thing at the time. And he was a good friend of Ruth Gordon, who also has written much, as we know, Adam's Rib and other things. And she was an actress at the time. They were friends all their life. One of my goals in my maybe eventual retirement is to go to the Library of Congress in the United States, because they have the letters of Ruth Gordon and Thornton Wilder. They wrote to each other across their long careers. And I would love to hear what they wrote about. Anyway, so our town is a story of a very tiny town called Grover's Corners. It's just the story of a boy who lives next door to a girl. Act 1, we figure out they love each other. Act 2, they get together. And Act 3 takes place on the hillside above the town, which we found out very quickly is the town cemetery. And it turns out that Emily, the young woman, has died in childbirth. And so she comes to the cemetery to take her place. And there are other people in town that we've met in the previous scene, the previous acts, who we hear how they died and what they're thinking of. And she begs the narrator, who's been played alternately by Paul Newman, Frank Sinatra, and currently it's Jim Parsons on Broadway. she asks him, she finds out you can relive your life. You can go back and enjoy days of your life while you're dead. And she's, oh my gosh, I have to go do that. I want to go see all these things. And the people tell her to choose the most inconsequential day. So she chooses the day of her 13th birthday and she goes back. Well, she's living the day as if she was 13. Her mother thinks of her as 13 and is pretty much ignoring her because she's busy washing dishes and there's things to do. And she suddenly realizes how little time we have for each other, which I think is a really beautiful philosophy. And I think writers, when we write, are giving our philosophy to the world. So what happens is she starts realizing it goes so fast. And this is the one I want you guys to look at and focus on because we're gonna mimic this in our own writing. It goes so fast, we don't have time to look at one another. I didn't realize all that was going on in life, and we never even noticed. So she wants to go back up the hill, and this is the part I'm focusing on. This is the monologue part that I like, and I have students do this. She says, wait, one more look. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners. Goodbye to clocks ticking and mama's sunflowers, and food and coffee, and new iron dresses and hot baths, and sleeping and waking up. Earth, you're too wonderful for anybody to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every single minute. And of course, the stage manager has this wonderful ending, which is not part of the monologue, but saints and poets mostly, they do some. And that has always struck me as one of the most beautiful things and a great exercise, right? So let me see if I can manage the escaping of this and getting myself back to y'all, which I think I'm doing right there. Look, yay. So that's the goal right now. I want everybody to focus. Let's give ourselves about a minute, maybe two. I'll keep track. And I want us to say, if you, now we're doing it from your own personal perspective right now. What are you saying goodbye to if you are the character on the hill? What are the things in your mind? Give it about 4 or 5 things that are what you would say goodbye to, right? And then we'll hear them from everybody. So give it a minute if you want to type or you want to write, and we will share. Setting my timer. In about 20 seconds. What you can end with, and we will listen to them. Do a quick who's ready. Oh, I give you mine because I won't make anybody do something I don't do. And I always try to read first so students aren't like, oh my God, I'm the first one people are going to listen to and they're going to hate it. It's terrible, right? And this is totally off the cuff, right? And I think that's the beauty of it, making people think off the cuff and then find what parts of that they'll use later. Mine is goodbye to long walks in my neighborhood full of little libraries and to used bookstores and to cinnamon bun smells in the mall. Goodbye to cats who scratch the door frames in my house but cuddle at my feet at night. Goodbye to rain and sun and snow. And goodbye to cats. Which is just silly, right? Just looking for that button to end things. But those are the things that were on my brain right now. So let's hear to some other folks. Who's willing to go first?
My chat GPT is a little slow this morning, so I don't have anything yet.
I read a thing from someone, an article was sent around to some teachers I know that was about kids, students using ChatGPT and AI. And at one point they said, but there's a big wonder about whether or not generating essays with them might be considered plagiarism. And I thought, we're wondering? I don't think that's a wonder. I think that's kind of a given. But yeah.
Actually, if you could publish your stuff, I would like to use that, what you just wrote.
Oh, there you go.
I'll acknowledge you.
You'll give me a citation, yes.
Yeah,
Put it up on the internet.
Yeah.
Alex is ready to go. Let's go for it.
Okay, I don't know what I wrote, but we'll see what this is. So I wrote, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, wonderful.
Okay, perfect. Goodbye, grandmother's homemade soups. Goodbye to the mosque I saw from her living room window. And goodbye to the minaret my older cousin promised to climb up with me. Goodbye to riding bikes to the little store at the corner of her street. And goodbye to eating lemon ice cream while we walk up the hill back home to grandmother's house.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Of course, I love grandmothers because I live with my grandparents, but so beautiful. And what's perfect about that is of course, we all know this, we all teach this, but it's that specificity, right? Right. I would not mention minarets because that's not something from my background that is visual. I didn't even mention church, for heaven's sake. And I think that's so beautiful, right? And the idea of the child's brain thinking you're going to climb something like that. That is such a true innocent moment of childhood, right? I love that. Oh, that's so fun. And then it also touches on taste, right? Because lemon ice immediately, I think, I was like, oh, that would be so cool and refreshing right now. So it's a beautiful, and it's funny because I covered Cinnabon, the smell, not the taste. So clearly food, those are memories, as we all know, that are very deeply tied to our childhood. Oh, that was so lovely. Thank you, Alice. That was beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Who else? But first of all, anybody else want to say something about that? What struck you? Yeah, Laura, please.
Thank you for this exercise, first of all, Rosanne, and thank you for everyone who's sharing. What strikes me about it is to hear other people's work. That was beautiful. And makes me think about my grandmother, makes me think about, my walks or I was like, oh, my bike ride. So every time I hear from a different person, I think, oh, I want to go back and write mine again. And I think that's good. I think that's a good thing because I think the time pressure, I love time pressure, just do what's on the top of your head. But I also like it when it makes you want to keep writing. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And Rosanne, I just have a quick question about your lecture. What was the trick? I didn't start writing down the tricks until after soap. What was the trick in the soap monologue?
It's the whole life story. It's literally one
life
play.
Story. Okay, one act play. I did write that down. I just didn't write. Okay, just checking that. Thank you.
Sure.
No, I can read mine since I'm already talking, unless somebody else.
Please go for it.
Goodbye, Kansas sunrise and sunset. Cloud pictures, hummingbirds, birds singing, first sip of coffee, dog cuddles, people cuddles, laughing at irony of people and situations with those who know me best. We laugh the hardest. Theater, film, in the dark. Storms rolling in, peaceful endings.
Oh, again, how beautiful. How beautiful. I love the cloud pictures. I immediately saw them in my mind, right? That's something, it's what's cool about this, about doing a monologue. It's so interesting. There's the very specific things like Kansas, right? But then the universal things that we can all see, and that's how we all share in that right away. And I think that's obviously the power of what we're doing. And then I love hummingbirds, so it's adorable. Suddenly, again, think about, oh, there's some at my bird bath. You know, I got to go look outside pretty soon. That's really pretty. Anybody? Other thoughts? What stuck out with you in that one?
Cuddles with dogs and non-dogs.
I love what you did. You did this repetition, like you go in a tangent, and then your brain went to the next level of that same tangent. So I can see what you mean about the rewriting concept, because yeah, same thing. I'm looking at mine going, oh, and then I could add this, and then I could build on that, which of course is the point, right?
Yeah, I started with the dogs, and I was like, I guess I gotta add people.
I love it. I love that's very, very cute. Beautiful. Yes, Tom, I'm sorry I didn't respond to you on that. We took the Emily monologue from Our Town, where she's saying goodbye to Grover's Corners and whatnot. And basically, we all wrote our own version of what that would be from our personal perspective. So if you want to take a second while we hear a couple more, because we're going to build on that in the next exercise. Juan Carlos, let's go for it.
Hello, and well, thank you for this session and for sharing. Yeah, it helps to hear others before you.
It does.
I'm not sure if
before you go, let me tell everybody that you did one a couple months ago, and they should check out the videos and see it, because I learned a lot from Juan Carlos's presentation.
Thank you for that promo. And I'm not sure if I got it because it had to do necessarily with childhood or not. But I'll just read what I wrote. So,
yes, please.
Goodbye to students and fellow teachers. Goodbye to noisy nights. Goodbye to Saturday outdoor barbecues. Goodbye to books, films, old toys, and puppets. Goodbye to riding horses with my cousins near the river. Goodbye to acting on the stage. Goodbye to grandmothers and grandfathers. That's it.
That's beautiful. It's funny how we're all, many of us are remembering grandparents in this. It's as if, and those, if you want to make those connections, those are the people we think we'd be joining whenever it is we leave, as they say, this mortal coil. So those are the people we'd be reconnecting to, and maybe that's what's putting them in our minds. I never even thought about that, but it's really pretty. I can see that. I love the horse, riding horses by the river. I can see that. I've been on a horse twice at like horse farms, so I'm not a horse. But the memory of that and the visual of that is really, really strong. And then I like the idea of noisy nights, because that is the universal. It means a lot of things to different people. It can be parties in someone's backyard. It could be people who go to clubbing. It's, but right away you're like, oh yeah, what does that mean to me? And you build on that in your own brain. It was very pretty. Other thoughts about Juan Carlos?
Yeah, the riding horses by the river, that's out to me as well, because of the specificity, the power of specificity. But then also, like you said, the noisy nights had the opposite power of kind of opening up your own interpretation, making you fill in the gaps. Both work.
Yeah, they do. They both work, which is really kind of cool. Let's hear one or two more, because then I'll give you the next level of this. Stevie, and then Tom. I see Tom get ready. Stevie, let's go with Stevie, and Tom had more time to get ready. Go for it, Stevie.
Okay. I said, goodbye to dog breath in my face. Goodbye to the sound of a page turning in a really lovely book. Goodbye to my husband's laughter. Goodbye to sliding into cool sheets on a warm night. Goodbye to gathering around my kitchen island, too many bodies in a too tiny space. Goodbye to the exhale that follows my first sip of coffee in the morning. That's it.
Yay! Yay! For me, the cool sheets. Suddenly I could feel how great that is at night to slide into, like, oh, we changed the sheets today and everything's cool and lovely, and got to make sure the pajamas are new too. Like, they go wash them the same day. You can't. Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. I love that. Again, and that's so funny because, and then dog breath is, I don't have a dog. Clearly, I'm a cat person, but immediately I could almost smell that myself from my friend's dogs, right? So that was very, very specific. very specific. It wasn't just the dog, right? We've had dog cuddles from Laura. They've got dog breath from Stevie. It's also really cool how so many of us have connections to animals, which are also, of course, what we would be leaving behind and why we would be thinking about that. Yeah. That's very cool. Oh, Laura, go ahead and say whatever you put in the chat.
I was just going to say, from my professor side of my world, I love this for bonding. I always look for these things we can do early in the semester to find community and to find our commonality. So I'm just relating with others, and I had no idea we didn't know what we were writing. We had 90 seconds, and yet we're finding all this commonality. So I really love this.
Yay, yeah. It seems to me it just works. Sometimes you fall into things. And it was because I was teaching undergrad students several years ago before the MFA happened. And I found out they hadn't seen Our Town. And I thought, what's wrong with these people? You have to see this play. But I didn't have time to show it to them. So I showed them the third act. And I had to have a reason for it besides, this is wrong for you not to know this piece. So I turned it into an exercise to have an excuse for showing it to them. That's how we all have talked about. We sort of stumble into these things. Very cool. Tom, did you want to share? Did you have time?
Okay. This is a great exercise, and I thank you for the opportunity. All right. A very short one. Goodbye to seeing my wife Posey first thing every morning. Goodbye to feeling the bite of gravel on my bare feet. Goodbye to sipping iced tea all day. Goodbye to music, wondering what will come next.
Fun. First applause, always applause. I love that none of us have mentioned music. Isn't that interesting? And yet that's very integral to, of course, many of our lives. That's really cool. And that's just hearing the many different ones, you suddenly go, oh, I got to add that into mine, right? And that helps us, that builds the rewriting process, which is what I like about that. And then you had the tactilness of, I could remember walking on gravel with my bare feet, right? It's funny because some people might have said dirt roads because that's different. Or maybe they would have mentioned walking in the sand, right? But your actual memory is gravel. So that is very specific to you. That really, really strikes me as very pretty. Yay, cool.
The first thing that I wrote was goodbye to feelings. And then I crossed it out because I thought no, it's not specific enough. And then I went into more tactile, specific things. But actually that goodbye to music, I think, is a better way of saying that. Like goodbye to all of the evocation that music gives us. Yeah, that hits.
That makes sense because music is feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, several folks have mentioned, I thought it was funny, I didn't mention films or TV, but I do that all the time. But isn't that weird? Maybe on the spontaneity, my brain was like, I won't miss that. I'll miss these other things. I don't know why. And that's a really fun way to get into thinking about a character too. Chris, do you want to read yours? You don't have to.
Yeah, go on then. So after I wrote and crossed out goodbye to feelings, I wrote goodbye to cold mornings, goodbye to hot sauce, goodbye to kisses, goodbye to sweaty walks in humid summers up steep inclines, goodbye to stacks of unread books, and the red ones too, and declines in cold snap winters and the smell of mud on boots.
Ooh, very cool, very cool. Yay. I love the beginning. I love the cold, hot. Suddenly you're yanking the brain into two different places and they both, oh, I got that, right? That was very cool. And then the building that you did, which is very similar to Laura's, start with this, then build to that, build to that. One thought was chained to the next thought. And that's part of the ability to just do that sort of spontaneous writing, which I also think that a lot of our students don't have a lot of experience doing. It's not something they've had the time to do. It makes us realize, you watch a movie like Little Women, and sometimes people sat around all morning and wrote poetry. That was a thing you did with your spare time. And I can't think of a whole lot of people who do that as part of their spare time today, right? I think that's a myth. Yeah. And yet we learn things like if you try to do a thing like that, you're like, oh, I wrote a pretty nice little poem, or I have this ability to play with words. And obviously that's kind of what these turn out to be. Yeah. Very cool.
I think that thing of taking the time to play with words is so helpful and crucial, really. It just builds up this instinct that you just have in the tips of your fingers. So when you sit down to write, you can just, stuff will come out and there'll be associations going on and rhyme features in the words that you just, that just come to you in the same way as practicing anything, right? And I think a lot of people, I think that's done a lot less nowadays.
With writing. Oh yeah. People will go practice baseball and whatever, swimming and all the sports things, but they don't practice art in that way. And certainly if they practice art, they think they're painting or doing those things, which are all lovely. But yeah, nobody sits around and writes poetry or letters. We've been having discussions. I have one recent MFA alum who said he was tired of social media and whatnot. And he said, I just want to write letters to people and mail them. If anybody wants to hear from me, send me your actual address. And I did. And he said, seems weird to send a letter to my professor. But I was graduated, so we're just friends, right? But it's really cool. And I get a letter from him and I write like a 3-page letter, and and you end up telling the story of what you've done recently, which we don't realize because we're all writers. That is a skill that not everyone has, right? Because I have a lovely cousin who I adore deeply, and I will send her 3-page or 4-page letters, and I'll get back a thing that says, great to hear from you. Been really busy. Nothing new. Talk soon. And I know she's done really interesting things, but she doesn't the ability to put it on paper and turn it into a story. It's a skill that not everybody has.
Well, I think with Chris, what Chris just said about one thought leading to another, I think that's important because, sorry to dwell on this, but we're in a battle right now in our school about AI, and we got to use it, and especially brainstorming. If you brainstorm using that, you're going to foreclose what Chris just said. You're not going to come up with the really cool stuff. You just won't, and that's a critical observation, I think.
I agree totally.
Yeah.
I think yeah, go ahead.
I really appreciate this, Rosanne, especially the 90 seconds, because I think, for example, like I read the anti-racist writing workshop by Felisa Rose Chavez recently, and it was like, she gives all these wonderful activities, but I'm thinking to myself, with the big class sizes and the limited time, how am I really going to affect all this? So I really like the fact that we can do this in 90 seconds, and even maybe on a workshop day when we typically don't have time for those types of activities, just get those muscles moving with the students. I really appreciate that limited time frame and really showing us and showing the students how much can be accomplished in that short time frame. So thank you.
It's amazing. And frankly, like I didn't risk, I was going to play the Doctor Who one because I love it so much, or I was going to play an Emily one, but I wasn't sure I could make Microsoft Teams do it. So I do have all the links that I can make sure to send Chris that he can send out. Because I think showing them the Emily one, having a girl do it for you, one, again, it's exposure to the play, but two, then that's kind of open with the visual, then go into they do the work, and it gives them a blend of everything. So I apologize for not risking doing that this morning. Now, I will say, because we only have a few more minutes, I'll say the next thing I do with this is usually, of course, it's a class where students are either writing a pilot or they're writing a movie. I want them now to think of one of the characters that they're writing. And I want them to write this speech from that character's point of view. What is it that they are going to say goodbye to? And I want them to try to use one or two pieces from their own, whether they build off of that or they end on it or they blend it. But I want them to realize that, of course, much of how we create characters, whether they're arch villains or not, we're pulling from ourselves. So if we do our version first, and then we do it from the perspective of the character we're writing, they really start to think about how personal their writing is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Could I ask you real quick? Do you do this on the very first class?
No, my first class, when Chris and I talked about doing this, my first class, because I want them to get to know each other, is I have everybody do a 5-minute free write on the history of the story of their name. And everybody tells us where their name came from. And, sometimes I had a young man whose name was Dylan. And I said, okay, so your parents are either Bob Dylan fans, Dylan Thomas fans, or they watch 90210 and it's Dylan from that show. And the kid did not know. So he called his mother to find out. He'd never asked. He's like 18 years old, 20 years old. Never asked his mother why he was named Dylan, because clearly that wasn't his father or his uncle's name. And the answer that came back was that his mother was pregnant and she was walking through a mall And somebody at the perfume counter squirted her with a perfume called Dylan, and she liked it.
Wow.
I mean, it was hilarious, right? But what we learned from that is everyone hears everyone's name out loud, and then they, begin to get to know each other. And also, my other favorite was a young gentleman who was from China, a foreign exchange student. The name he was using in the States was Tony. And I teased him because, of course, I grew up around a bunch of Tonys because I'm Sicilian. And I said, what made you pick that? And it was because he and his family in China watched the Tony Awards every year. And to them, that was an American name, not particularly Italian or anything like that. He said it represented the highest quality that you could be. And I thought, oh, interesting. Like, who would have known that, right? So I learned something about his family. Of course, everyone was like, okay, he's Tony, right? Well, and of course, he actually then did reference the name that he was born with and why he didn't use it in the States. And all of that was really interesting information. So I do that. And then everyone has to share. I shouldn't say have to. Pretty much everyone chooses to. But yeah, so that's
cool.
my first day.
Yeah, it reminds me of this guy I knew at my first day job who said he didn't even have a name at his birth. His parents hadn't figured one out yet. And they finally settled on one. You know what it was? Joe. And you know what his last name was? Smith. And that was his father's name. So this required a lot of thought, didn't it?
Is that hilarious? That's hilarious. Yeah. We tell the joke. My son's name is Joseph Claude because my grandfather was Joseph and my husband's grandfather was Claude. I wanted to name my kid Giuseppe because that was my grandfather's actual name, but of course he changed it when he moved to the States. And my husband, who's a farm boy from Ohio, said, no, Giuseppe will get him beat up on the playground. Except he went to elementary school in California where he was with a Gaetano and like 3 other guys from other countries with names that were unique to their ethnicity. But we're glad we had a boy because we wanted to honor our grandparents. And had we had a girl, the problem would be she would have been Fanny Rose. And that is the best stripper's name I've ever heard. So we clearly wouldn't have used it. So yeah, you get lots of cool stories out of names. So I did this probably. Go ahead.
Do you ask them to guess if they don't know, or do you tell them to research it and come back?
Well, we want to do it that morning because it's our first morning together. So then they have to write. Sometimes then what they'll do is they'll write about whether they liked it or hated it, or what nicknames they go by, or why they shortened it because they go by JC instead of Joseph Claude. Yeah, they have to say some story about their name. And then if they don't actually know, it makes them then go and ask their parents. And because everyone has a cell phone, I usually find out the next day, hey, I found out mine was named after whatever. So I think it's fun. Cool. Yay. All right, so that would be my thing. Would be then we would do it from a character's name, and then we would read those, and then have them see if they could fit that into their piece somewhere, or at the very least, they now know something more about their own character. They've had to force themselves to think about this idea from their character's perspective, and it gives them something else to build on later. There's a great scene in Rocky where he's ice skating, and he's basically telling his childhood. And that's a great place to put that kind of information. And it's a reminder that the audience wants to know that. And yes, it's exposition and it can be done very boringly, but if you have some pretty phrases, you can fit it in better places. So I just think it's a nice way to build up your character. Okay. So yeah, I don't think we have time for everyone to do their character version and then read those, but I would suggest you do that on your own and see what you can incorporate. And I realized I didn't finish showing the PowerPoint, which shows the pages with the links. Should I just send that to you, Chris?
Yeah, you can do that, or we can. We've got kind of 12 minutes left.
Okay. Oh, I can do that. Except I have to see if I can figure out. I don't. It tells me I'm still sharing, so I don't know how to show to my other screen. I apologize.
I think you just had to click on the slideshow button the last time. Is that right?
Oh, that's true. Let's see. Did that get me anywhere? But I don't think you see this on the screen, do you?
Yeah, we've got it.
Oh, wonderful. Yay. See, technology. See, I don't want AI around, but I like this. Okay. Oh, well, this is what we did, obviously. And then this is what I said. Oh, and here's another thing I forgot to say. You can have it done by a character's thing. You can also then change the style. So you can have them say goodbye in a funny way, or you can make it really tragic. Or a friend of mine threw in irony, which I thought was interesting, or angry joy. So you can pick an emotion you want to feed the piece. And that helps them. That speaks to Laura's idea that we need to do some rewriting. And so now, how do I build on that? Should the character be angry? Should the character be tragic, et cetera, et cetera? So that's another way that you can build on that. Excellent. Good. I'm so happy about. Go ahead.
If it's like the first class, wait, no, this is not the first class. They already have a project they're working on?
Yeah, so I usually do this a little bit like after they've pitched and we know like who it's kind of good to do when you're starting to think about characters, but get character bios. But I've also done it late in the event they've actually written a first draft, and now I don't think you've given me enough emotion about your character, so let's drill down into who they are this way.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Of course. So yeah, so that's what I want to do. And then these, if you want to take a picture, or again, this will be on the video now. This is the Doctor Who piece, and this is a connection. There are several, everyone in the internet has done the Emily monologue, which I think is cool. And then this is the Harold Gould one. And this is the Designing Women one. And these are really powerful ones to show students because it really gets them. I wonder do you think if I clicked on this, I'd get anywhere?
Might do, yeah.
Let's see what happens. Maybe we'll see this one. This is a good one. I think she's good at this. Let's see. Oh, it went there.
But no sound.
No sound?
Yeah.
No sound. Oh, well. All right, I tried. I tried. These things don't always work the way you want. But then you guys can use the links. And it's pretty cool to see these various things. The Harold Gould one is beautiful. I wish I could write like Susan Harris. This is really one of the more, and she did that so often in the course of that show. And this is probably, 8 episodes in, right? So you're really getting a sense of that. And he's just a guest character. Another thing I really love to show that for is to remind them that any guest character shouldn't just be a plot point, and they shouldn't be a prop. They should have something specific about them, their whole story, and you should know what that is. Laura, you have a thought?
Yeah, I just wanted you to talk a little bit more at the beginning. I was very intrigued by you saying we bring ourselves to our characters. And could you tie that all back together as the end of this lesson, just to think about that a little more?
Oh, definitely. I think the reason I like people to do it from their own POV first is it is easier, right? As Alessandra said, it's easier for them to think that way immediately and do something fast. And then they start to say, what do I have in common? Right? So they can use this and say, oh, I can make my character like cats or dogs, or what that is not something I would have given them myself. And I think that's really important. It helps us from the perspective of how poetic can we be? Can the character be good with words? Have we not thought of that? I think it's really important. We tell jokes all the time about how Aaron Sorkin is beloved, except all those jokes online about how every single character sounds like they went to Princeton. And that isn't what you're supposed to do, right? Everyone should have their own language, their own vocabulary. So when you have written in your voice, then you can recognize if you're making the mistake in your own script where everybody sounds like you. So you sort of have to, it's a way to recognize your own voice and then look back and say, oh yeah, this person should never think like that. And they shouldn't use this language. They should use this slang and stuff. So I think you can use it. So I think it works two ways. It works as an introduction to the character, as I said to Paul, and it works as a way to look back and hone what you've got going on when you have it. And then you look at this and say, oh, why didn't I put that in there? Why wasn't I thinking that? Right? So does that make sense? Yay. Cool. Yay. Anybody else? Questions or thoughts? Ways you can incorporate?
I will observe that I really like finding exercises that can help students to get their feelings out. I'm all about the feelings, even when I cross it out of my own writing, to get their feelings out in the class together, as part of a group, and to bond and to kind of get. I think in your presentation for Romana's working group, Rosanne, I think you were talking about fostering friendship in class, and I just think that's like the first thing to do, and makes everything else possible and better after you've done that, right?
I think so, especially in my world, because we do my MFA people only come to town twice a year. And so that first time, like, they've got to bond really quickly because everything else is going to be online, and they have to try to get to know each other and to feel comfortable. Because another thing that I don't know how many times y'all have run into this, but sometimes there'll be one person who's afraid to pitch anything because what if it gets stolen? And you have to make them comfortable giving their raw ideas in a group of people, because that is the job. It's what Paul said. You have to be able to brainstorm and throw the ideas out and be comfortable with, you know what, maybe somebody will take that idea and do something better with it than I could have, right? So that's helping them feel comfortable being creative in front of other people. This goes back to what Chris said earlier. We don't practice that in our childhood. We're not Mary Shelley sitting around with our friends and writing, Frankenstein of an evening. So then they do fear that if they do it in public, they'll lose something instead of they'll gain something.
Now, do you do this? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You go.
Oh, no, a quick question again. Do you do this only on an introductory level class, or if there's an advanced thesis where students have been writing for a year, do you also do that if there's a new class, don't know the students, or you do it for both?
Yes, I definitely would do it for both. But I would be picky is the wrong word. I would want everyone in that older group or that more advanced group everyone to read out loud. And then I use the thing where I said, okay, now redo it where the person's happy or, they're mad or whatever it is. And I like now, of course, Laura's idea, or now I would say, now go back after you've heard people comment on it, add 4 more lines. Right now it has to be form, you know what I mean? And I'd see them build on it together. And I think that would be a great lesson in rewriting for an older group. I wouldn't do that with a younger group. Anybody else?
Well, I'll just add that I remember being about 12 years old, maybe 12, 13 years old. And I was such a geek, entertaining myself by writing up like fake newspaper reports of my school football games, and maybe adding that I scored a couple of goals that I didn't, just to entertain myself. Oh, and yeah. I guess people talk about this a lot now, but it's definitely something that I think about for myself and for students too, about how rare it is that we're bored now because you just go to your phone, right?
Yeah. You can always find something fun to watch.
Exactly. It's right there and it's immediate, and having long stretches that you have to fill with your imagination and words, that I think that's probably why I'm a writer, that I found that when I was a kid and liked it.
When I argue when kids say that video games are active and TV or movies are passive, I'm like, I watch TV actively. Oh my God, the chauffeur just had a line. They wouldn't give the chauffeur a line. He must be the murderer. Oh, why is this person in the scene? There's no reason for that extra person. Did you hear what he just said? He just referenced that. Oh my God, I don't know what that means. Like, I'm always talking in my head or sometimes out loud. It's a very active thing to do. Where obviously in a movie theater, I'm not. And I think we don't teach people to do that anymore. They think it is passive, and no wonder they'd rather go press buttons and shoot zombies on screen. But so we don't do that. We certainly don't spend that quiet time. I was really happy because my kid didn't get a cell phone until he hit high school, until he was in 10th grade actually. And so in 9th grade, he had a girlfriend who lived farther from her house, and it took a bus ride. And somebody was like, "You're going to let your kid on the bus?" And I was like, "Yeah, he's going to walk to the bus by himself because he didn't have a phone. So there was nothing to do with his time except wait and ride the bus and get there." I thought, you have to have that experience. I used to walk to the library by myself. And it was, 10 blocks from my house in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade. And you just were thinking, it's what you're saying, Chris. And then you realize when you do crossword puzzles now, lots of words that some people don't know. Whether they've never played with those words or they never read those words and then put them into their life. Ella, if you have a thought.
Yeah, I just really quick just wanted to say that as a screenwriter, I took an acting class for the first time this year, and I had to perform a monologue. And I was like, oh, this is weird. But it really just shifted my perspective on writing, because I noticed that a lot of the times the character is not going to say how they really feel. They're going to talk about kind of other things. But the feeling is really kind of expressed through the body and the movement and just like the expressions. So yeah, that's why I was kind of drawn to this, and it's just helped me a lot, Roseanne. I just wanted to share that it's been really eye-opening to also have that kind of parallel experience of also like performing a monologue too. So, yeah.
Oh, I definitely agree. That's really true. And I love what you said. You're right. That it's you learn all this about the character from that monologue. A good one will do that for you, and that's why we tell people you can't do tons of them, and you can't just yammer on. And it has to be succinct and get to the point and be about something, right? And that's a beautiful moment for the writer to tell you the theme of their piece and what they hope you walk away with, right? And so in that Harold Gould one, the theme is hope. There's a reason for the Jody character to have hope. It doesn't seem like it, but that's the only thing that's going to get him through, and he can't give it to himself, so it makes that character so important to him. Tom, you have a thought? Tom?
Yeah, thanks. I want to go back to those high school stories for just a second and share with you what happened to me during my junior year in high school. I was trying to build my resume, and I thought it would be good to run for student government. So the only slot that was open was to run for treasurer. Oh man, if I could be the treasurer of our student government association, that would be a huge star on my resume. And I was running against a sophomore. Oh, piece of cake. I got creamed. It was awful. I was running against a very popular young man, and I was sort of a nerdy unknown at that time. And so I got called into the guidance office and consultant and everything. It says, listen, we were kind of hoping this would happen because we want to offer you the opportunity to be the editor of the school newspaper next year. And that appointment changed my life because that turned me into writing. It was unbelievable.
I love that. I love knowing that teachers sometimes see the things in us that we don't see in ourselves.
Yep.
Oh, that's beautiful. Very cool. We want to one more question or one more thought or Laura.
Yeah, I was just quickly sharing an exercise we do in my class the first couple of weeks. They create it the first week, and the second week we share it. It's 2 stories. One is true, one is false. 60 seconds, hold them to the 60 seconds. And then they present them. They actually record them. They self-record them. And then we watch them because it's only 2 minutes per student. And then we all in the room have to vote which was the true story. So I go story A, the holdup at the gas station, or story B, broke the elbow on the bike rolling down the hill. And then we all have to vote. And then it gets us into really, and then it's always hilarious because they go, it was story A. And then everybody goes, no way. And so we're like, how did they trick us? How did they do it? And so it gets into, I think, what you were saying, Rosanne, about sharing your truth, but also identifying, was it details? What about the writing was so good that we thought that one was the true one? And it's an interesting exercise for just identifying truth.
Oh, I love that. You have it in the chat, so people should cut and paste that so that they have it in their thing. That's wonderful. Yay.
And this is it, again, is that a introductory exercise level, or do you do it in all your writing classes at the beginning, or how do you do it?
No, that one is in more of a, I would say, in the mid to upper level. It's like a 300 to 500 level course. They can take it at the 300 or the 500 level, depending on where they are. So no, that one's a little higher. But so I like this one, Rosanne, a lot. I think I'm going to think about this one for the lower level, but that one's a little higher level. And it's also sharing, I think, because they bond, because they're like, oh yeah, I broke my elbow on a trampoline. You know, again, it's like they're identifying the things we share in common. So that's why it's a good bonding exercise, and just learning these weird stories about people. Some are just amazing. But then trying to identify which one's true is the trick of it and the fun of it in the group.
Oh, that's a beautiful idea. I love it. Yay. Well, and this is why these are so much fun to do, because we get all these different perspectives. And again, I want to thank Chris for taking the time to put all of these together. He offered last year, 2 years now. Yeah, it was a big deal to suddenly come. I'm going to do another working group. Like, we're always looking for people to get more involved. Yes, so let us all applaud Chris. Thank you very much for doing this. Of course, thank you all for being here today. That's what makes it fun, right? With any class, it's the contributions that make the class. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rosanne.